Good afternoon, and thank you for taking time away from your families and businesses to join us for this Epic Insight. This is Brian Lenz, Director of Sales here at Epic Retirement Plan Services, and I will be your MC for today's call. As an advisor or bank trust representative, whether you like it or not, sales is an inherent part of your practice. The key to a healthy sales pipeline is developing good quality relationships with centers of influence through significant and deliberate effort. And today we're joined by Michael Dixon of Pool Consulting, who will address key factors in improving your success with COIs and show you how to maintain productive relationships in this vital area. With more than 20 years experience helping sales and service organizations grow and become more profitable, Michael brings real-world insights and experience to his work with bank wealth management teams and advisors. Michael received his BA and MBA from the University of Dallas and resides in Chicago with his wife of 35 years. As always, your line will be muted throughout the call, but if you have any questions you'd like me to run by Michael at the conclusion, feel free to enter those in the questions panel, and I will throw those at him. With that, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you to everybody at Epic. For all of the folks who are on the call now, you can see my contact information there. I'm always happy to entertain follow-up questions or interesting observations at my email address, which is on the screen, and I will make sure that Epic can send out the slide deck later today, first thing in the morning as we get to it. A number of years ago, and I cannot say how many, I made a presentation in this same format on this same general topic, and I wanted to reference the fact that I've been here before, but I also wanted to reference the fact that Pool Consulting, like a lot of folks in this industry, has had to live through a lot of change over the last couple of years. And as things have changed, our observations have changed and our recommendations have changed. And so I hope that if you saw me or heard me do that once before, you'll understand that this is a new updated version with some new observations. What I want to make sure we talk about today is how we earn referrals from professionals. Now, sometimes you'll hear me speak sort of bank language. I know that a lot of you are bankers, but a lot of you are also other investment professionals. Some of you have an ecosystem of a bank. Some of you don't. I would submit that the skills I want to talk about today are equally applicable in either venue, and if I err on one side or the other, I hope you'll accept my apologies. We want to talk about why people refer and how we can encourage them to do that. I'm going to use one of the terms that our firm has used for almost 50 years, which is the emotional bank account. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that works and how we have to build this out. At the end of the day, I hope that you'll walk away with an understanding of what you can do to encourage referrals instead of just waiting for them to happen. And I think that's probably my number one goal today, is to focus on that. I think just at the beginning of any presentation like this, we want to get our definitions down. We're talking about centers of influence, whether those are internal or external, as I said. These are people that like you, they trust you, they want to help you, they want to be invested in you and your success. It's somebody who works with, advises, or serves people that you could do business with. It's someone who cares about whether you succeed or not. It is almost certainly someone who is not in your business. There are a few cases in our space where a parallel competing organization has decided to exit a line of business or a size of business or a type of business, and it is sometimes possible that we can develop those competitors into referral sources for that niche market. We'd have to have some long, hard conversations with ourselves about whether that's business we truly want, but it is something that you should keep in mind, that not 100%, but largely, we're talking about not competitors. These aren't people we see at the industry shows. The second thing I want to make sure we get up front is this idea that we're cultivating relationships over a long haul. And we use a gardening metaphor at this point. You don't just throw the seeds out there and then expect it to happen, as I said a slide or two ago. This requires attention, management, care, concern. We want to understand what are the things we have to do. Possibly the most important point on this slide that I can point you to is that fourth line down, is make a dedicated commitment to spend a certain amount of time doing this. And when I say doing this, I mean looking for COIs, and we'll talk a little bit about where to look for them later. The maintaining them just becomes a regular part of your CRM management, if you will. I have most of my core COIs on either a monthly or a quarterly follow-up cycle. I contact them on a regular basis and say, how's it going? What have you heard? What are you understanding? And just about an hour ago, I got a text message from one of those COIs saying, hey, what's the range of prices that you have or set for this kind of a project? I'm talking to somebody who has this kind of a need. I want to give them a sense of what that would cost them to engage you. And I'm going to give them your name, your contact information. That didn't happen because I sent him a flyer. It didn't happen because I met him at a conference. It happened because over probably 2 years, I've talked to him about once a month and shared information with him, give as well as get. So I want you to think about what's your actual commitment to this. The other thing I want you to think about here at the front end is, do you even know who your COIs are? Have you kept score of opportunities you've received? And I don't mean opportunities you closed, because we always remember those to a certain degree. I mean opportunities maybe you didn't close, opportunities that maybe didn't quite work. Have you kept score on them, and have you recognized and acknowledged them? It would be a good idea to keep a list and keep track for a while and see who's really helping you and who isn't. At the very bottom of this slide, it says, should you make changes to your A and B list? It's a weird thing to say on slide number 5 of a presentation when you haven't talked about what an A or a B list is yet. So that means I got to show you the A or B list. Do you have a list? Do you know who you can count on to be looking for opportunities for you? Those are A's. And what are you doing to maintain them? Do you have a list of the people you'd really like to get into the mix? And what are you doing to get them into the mix? And probably the bottom line on this is a very small list. You don't need a ton of people on this. You need a couple in each category. I would say we need to think about doing more targeted at fewer sources and narrowing down the focus and then increasing the intensity is a much more effective direction to go. So who should we be targeting? Who should we be looking for? Who may be the best targets? And we talk about this as a bullseye metaphor. There's a certain number of folks that everybody knows. You and all your competitors know these are the people that are the best referral sources. Whether they produce referrals or not, you know they're the ones. But that also means everybody else knows it too. I'm going to urge you to think outside the box. Think about the referral source that nobody else has thought of. Think of the person that knows people who buy or use your product that isn't getting called on by all your competitors as a means of thinking about different ways to skin the cat, right? I'm going to ask you to think about who are people who are natural influencers, whether that's in business or whether that's just in life. Who are the people that know a lot of people and have influence over them? This slide has been a real challenge to keep up to date because the things that happen have changed radically over the last handful of years. First, because of technology. Second, because of the pandemic. But let's think about it. Who are the people who write? Whether that's blogging or podcasting or social media, I understand those aren't all writing, but those are ways people communicate. I want to look for and cultivate COIs who produce a lot of informed content. On the right-hand side, what about active in various community or industry organizations, clubs, journals, associations, conventions? It could even be a LinkedIn a LinkedIn virtual circle of communication, right? I want to focus on people who are active communicators because they're active influencers, right? This says hold or run for office, and I don't necessarily mean political office. That could just mean the kind of person that serves on the board of something. If they're the kind of person that serves on the board, they're the kind of person who volunteers extra. They're the kind of person who's known more. Those are people that are valuable connectors, valuable referrers, even if they're not industry experts. They don't have to understand what we do. They just have to tell people how great we are. And that's, I think, that's an outer circle, right? It's not going to be all the people they know. I'll give you a completely unrelated example, right? I do business with a bank in western South Dakota. They have a terrible time hiring professional staff. Where do they get a CFO? Where do they get a head of commercial lending? They have for years run ads in Field and Stream magazine. Not everybody that reads Field and Stream is an executive level banker, but I'll guarantee you that every executive level banker who would like living in western South Dakota does read Field and Stream. You see what I mean? They looked for an alternative referral source and they leveraged it very, very effectively, right? Look for people that do these kinds of things in any part of your life. Look for people who are networkers, people who maintain very large Rolodexes. This says business owners, and I added business owners who deal with the public. In a small community, I want to know and leverage the guy that owns the diner in town, the guy that owns the man or woman who owns the bakery in town. I want those who, as they deal with a ton of the public, they interact with a huge number of people. And those are people who know people and can influence people and can promote you. There's other lists here, right? Realtors, fundraisers, people that interact with large numbers of the public. This says HR directors. I don't think HR directors are a great referral source because they're HR directors. I think they're great referral sources if they work in large organizations because they know lots of people and they have a certain social standing with lots of people. I urge you to think outside the box and look for new and different referral sources. Now let's talk about what it takes to get a referral in place, and that is fundamentally about trust. People refer to you because they respect you as somebody who knows your business. They don't have to know your business. They just have to believe that you know your business. They have to believe that you have products and services that work. They have to believe that you can add value, right? A lot of this is your social standing, your social capital. If we're talking about people outside the industry, I've been doing what I've been doing for more than 20 years. I get calls from people all throughout my network, people I went to high school with, people I went to college with, people I used to be neighbors with. They call me up with banking questions because they know I've been in banking for 25 years. They believe in me. They can't spell any of the words that bankers use, but they believe that I can. And they also trust that if I can't solve the problem, I'll walk away. That's a personal credibility issue. They have respect and trust in me. They are looking for someone that'll help their friend. Now, there are reasons why they might not refer to you. And I think sometimes we get too hung up on they wouldn't make the referral. Well, maybe their customer isn't who you're looking for. Maybe their customer, their friend, isn't looking for what you've got. Or maybe they don't understand how you can help. Maybe they've never seen you actually do anything. And this is critically important. Do all your personal connections know what you do professionally? And this cuts both ways. Do you know what they do professionally? Do they know what you do professionally? Have you shared in minute detail? And that means small detail, right? Not deep dive stuff, but have you shared in general the kinds of stuff you're involved in, so that they could know that you have value, so they could share that information. And now we get to that conversation about the emotional bank account, understanding that connection that we build with everybody we know and do business with. I have an EBA with the coffee shop worker. I have an EBA with my neighbor about the yard work or the shoveling. I've got an EBA with the bankers I do business with and the financial professionals I do business with. It's developed over time. It's a function of very small deposits over time and hopefully avoiding withdrawals. And that's one of the reasons we use it. EBA is a Stephen Covey term. It's from the 7 Habits book, which as an old guy, I remember when it was the first book everybody read. I don't know if youngsters read that anymore, but it's a valuable insight into business. There are 3 components to EBA. There's ethics, trust. You have to be perceived to be trustworthy. There's pathos, empathy. You have to be perceived to understand the person you're talking to. When I interact with somebody, I need them to believe that I get, quote unquote, I use my finger quotes, get them. I get them. I know what their life is like. And finally, I have to be perceived as having the physical, technical, operational ability to deliver on my promises and solve the problem. Notice that 2 of the 3 of these components are purely emotional. Ethics and empathy, purely emotional, has nothing to do with my knowledge or my capability. 1/3 is critically important about my knowledge and capability, but 2/3 are completely about my personal presentation, and that's important. I mentioned deposits and withdrawals. Some of this is just fundamental, basic courtesy stuff. I use names correctly. I show up on time. I'm deferential and courteous, right? The one place where EBA is different than bank account balances is that EBAs are built over a period of time, small deposits. Withdrawals are very, very large. Most of us in our daily lives, we live in a world where our checking account is funded with our paycheck, a large deposit, and then it is, decremented in small withdrawals. EBAs are the opposite. You meet somebody and over a period of time, you develop this sense of trust with them. And if you screw it up, right? If you use the wrong name, if you forget something, if you reference the wrong thing, use an inappropriate word or phrase, the withdrawal is significant. And you have to know that's going to be there, and you have to know that's there. Now, think about the people you're approaching as referral sources. How do they fit into this? What are the things that a banker you want to have make a referral is going to think is most important in the ethics and empathy world? How do you project to them that you share their worldview about customers, their worldview about banking, their worldview about service? How do you communicate to them that you have the same high standards of ethics that they have? And in the commercial world, in the outside referral world, how do we interact with a wide variety of different people who all have different opinions about this stuff, but project to each of them that we meet their standard? And that's the next thing I want to focus on for a few minutes, which is about personality style. I'm not in any means trying to say that I'm going to label people or pigeonhole them or put them in boxes or anything, but I do want to take a few minutes and talk about personality style, how our personality affects things, and how the personality style of the referrer can affect things. I want to make sure you understand that flexibility is the key. As salespeople, it is critically important that we are able to flex with the people that we're communicating with. It's also critically important that we know who we are, where we stand on the personality spectrum, so that we can pivot and position ourselves correctly with the other. We use a very, very simple personality style system at Pool Consulting. It's meant for sales application. It's meant as something I can do while I'm on a sales call, while I'm in front of a prospect. I can think about where they fit on these two axes. Vertically, tell versus ask. Very quickly after I meet somebody, I can determine whether they are a tell or whether they are an ask. And conversely, I want to very quickly figure out whether they are a fact person or a feeling person, whether they're a fact person or an emotion person. And when I figure that out about them, I want to know how intense, how far away from the center point they are on both of those measures, okay? So when I think about this, I think about the driver, the upper left quadrant, goal-oriented, organized, intense. Some people would say pushy, insensitive, impatient. Most of your bank CEOs, by the way, are drivers, just as a quick definition, right? This is my customer base in a nutshell in almost all cases, right? On the lower left quadrant, analyticals, very rational, very thorough, very detailed, often perceived to be indecisive. They aren't always great word people, they're number people, right? Up on the upper right, enthusiasm, outgoing, personable people. These are very high tell and very strong feeling, not fact-driven people. They're often perceived to be undisciplined and unorganized, right? And the lower right, that emotional, but not a demonstrative person, a facilitator, supportive team player, incredibly loyal. And because of that, perceived to be sort of wishy-washy and unbusinesslike. When I deal with a prospect, I quickly put a mental picture of where they are on this spectrum, and I keep it in mind as I'm figuring out how I want to appeal to them and how I want to communicate with them, right? Now, you can tell this in a lot of ways. You can tell this by what their office looks like. How chock-a-block with data is it, or how chock-a-block is it with pictures, right? How much personality is expressed in their language, in their clothing, in their car, for heck. You can do a lot of this just by what kind or color of car somebody's driving, right? And sure, you're going to guess wrong every now and then because somebody else decorated the office or they're driving their spouse's car. But follow me for a second. If you think about this and then you think about how you're going to position yourself with them, understand each quadrant and what they're driven by. Drivers want to be in charge, so I always give a driver a choice, A or B. Analyticals are driven by a fear of being wrong. I never want to get in a conflict with an analytical about numbers. I want to honor their numbers, right? You will know that most of your commercial lending partners, the bankers and the executives in most banks, are to the left of the line. They're analytical. They're numbers people, right? That's critically important. Most of the brokers in the world, most of the stockbrokers, RIA people in the world, are above the horizontal line. They might be analyticals, they might be expressors, but they're almost always tells. They're almost always out there being demonstrative, being driven to be known, right? Not at the lower side where they're protecting things. Now, honestly, above the line, those folks are going to have a whole lot more of a network. But if you think about the below the lines, their networks may be smaller, but they're going to be a lot tighter, a lot closer. If you can get a facilitator as a referral source, every single person in their circle will get referred to you because that's the kind of person they are. You get an expressor to be a referral source, they'll tell everybody they know about you once. Won't have the same impact maybe, but understand who you're dealing with and how it works, right? Think about what their motivations are. The driver wants to be in control. You have to make sure that as you would look for referrals from a driver, you don't ever take their control away from them, right? With an analytical, they always want to know that you're going to do the right thing by the math, by the numbers. With an analytical, you'll get a lot of referrals if you can show that you've got a cost-effective or an operationally effective solution. Expressors don't want you to take the spotlight off of them. right? You get an expressor as a referral source. You want to make sure that you keep them in the spotlight. You keep reflecting back to them the power of their referral. And with the facilitator, as I said, they're incredibly tight-knit with their community. So you want to make sure that you're honoring that relationship. You can do a lot of this. I mentioned office environment. I mentioned what they drive. You can tell a lot by how they talk and how they communicate and how they approach decision making, okay? It's very important to think about this. Now, I want to take a minute or two as I get close to wrapping up here, and I want to talk about doing the meetings that you need to do with this. As you're going out and looking for referral sources, I'm going to tell you that you want to be having meaningful conversations. You don't want to be having the conversation that says, hey, send me referrals. You want to be having a conversation that says, tell me about you. What's going on with your clients? What's going on with the industry from where you sit? What kinds of problems are your clients experiencing? And you want to listen intensely to that and look for what it tells you about their personality, the referral source personality. Also, what it tells you about what they want help with. And hopefully you find that niche, that connection where you can solve something that their client needs solved. You want to think about ongoing meetings with these partners. You want to be having these repeated meetings on a regular schedule, the schedule the referral source wants, right? Monthly, quarterly, whatever. But you want to come in and say, hey, what's new? What's going on? And you want to talk about these things in a way that keeps the relationship moving forward and keeps it deepening. That's a deposit to the EBA. You want to be bringing value. You want to be asking for value. You want to be elevating the conversation to a new level. You can't do this with a large number of people. You can only do this with a finite number of people. So I urge you to think about what's that small number, that handful that you want to invest time in. And look, if you're sitting there saying, but I don't have any referral sources now, I don't know, I don't have any place to start, I don't have anywhere to go, I'm going to say this is what I would recommend to you. I would recommend to start or to reset a relationship with a potential COI. I would call them up and say, as you're aware, we're expanding our business and we're looking to develop strategies and tactics to work with folks. Would you do me a favor? I was once, early on in my sales career, I was taught to often use the phrase, I have a problem and I'm hoping you can help me with it. Would you give me 45 minutes of your time to be interviewed about your perspective on the market and what an organization like us should be doing to grow? And some of them will say yes, and some of them will say no. And some of them will say, if you meet me before billable hours, and others will say, let's go have a 2-hour lunch at the country club. Doesn't matter what they say, it's the right answer. Go talk to them. Go talk to them with those questions that I put back here, and have a deep conversation about where they see the industry and what kinds of advice they give you. And at the end of that meeting, they're going to have a stronger EBA with you. They're going to like you more. They're going to think more highly of you. And if at the end of that meeting you say, I'd like to meet like this once a quarter by phone or face-to-face, would you be willing to do that? I would warrant that a lot of them, almost all of them, will say yes, and that will push forward your relationship. This is a start or reset strategy. Last thing, for those of you inside of banks, as I bring this to a close, I want to talk about something. In the game, you'll notice nowhere in here did I say make a rule that they have to give you referrals, or make a rule that the referrals have to be of a certain size, or make a rule that the referrals have to be of a certain value. In the corporate referral business, there are 3 things that are critically important: top-down support, compensation, and regular proactive contact between the referrer and the person to whom you refer. What I've got to ask you is, which of these do you, the salesperson, control? It isn't the first 2, it's the last one. You can control the proactive contact. You can control the schedule, the cycle, and the content of those conversations. So make sure you pursue them. Go out and remind people that you have a program. Go out and remind people that you're looking for referrals. Go out and remind people the exact kind of deal you're looking for. Because only by telling them what you're looking for will they know how to send you something. I want to thank you for your time. I want to tell you that I've enjoyed my partnership with Epic and the opportunities that I've been able to share with the Epic team over the last several years. And I look forward to answering your questions now, or if you want to send me an email, I'm always happy to engage in that format as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that plug, and likewise appreciate the partnership. We'll now open it up to a few minutes of questions. If you have those, once again, enter that in the questions panel in GoToWebinar. And as a reminder, we will send out a copy of the slides that Michael presented, along with a link to a recording of the session. So if you want to share that with others in your organization or revisit anything at your convenience, you can very easily do that. Michael, one thing, I hate to even bring up the topic, but with COVID not seeming to have a very tangible end here, is there anything you've seen as far as a slightly adapted strategy to get in front of these COIs or kind of break the ice? You know, maybe less people are meeting at the country club these days, as you referenced.
I think that I was on the circuit all of last year at trade shows, banking conferences, giving a talk on sales in the new world, I think is what we were calling it. And the bottom line is, a lot of those places we used to go, the Rotary, the country club, the chamber mixer, all those kind of things, those things are gone and they may never come back. It's critically important that we have a more intentional process like I described here. And I would say that for the professional external COI world, they have the same problem you have. So reach out to them and you're their friend. It's the hiding, if you don't reach out to them, they don't remember you're there and they don't have the initiative to pick up the phone and call you. You need to take the initiative and build that bridge. And then I would say the second part of this is invest in your technology. This stuff isn't super expensive. Get a good microphone, get a good headset, get a good light for your video conferencing. This stuff for probably $100, you can outfit yourself pretty nicely in a home office. Don't stress out about your background. That everybody understands that. My dog just threw a fit down the hall. That's going to happen. But invest in a little bit of the technology to make your presentation a little bit more professional and set yourself apart from your competitors.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've personally found a nice headset makes a world of difference. When I don't use it, people on my team particularly have come back to me and said, "Hey, were you doing something different? That didn't sound as crisp." So that makes a tangible difference. But good point, Michael. And one interesting question came up is, you talked about personality types and connecting, and do you find cases where one might put forth a different business personality versus a personal life personality, and with which of those is it more important to attempt to connect with if you're trying to make deposits, as you've outlined?
Yeah, in the history of this stuff, we've had a lot of people talk about, people's under stress personality as opposed to their regular personality or whatever. I think over time we do shift a little bit, depending on where they are in life, where their economics is, where their family situation is, some of those kind of things. Grandpa was always a really pleasant guy to be around because he was retired and didn't have the worries of the world anymore, a lot different than dad maybe, I think as you meet people, you got to encounter them where they are. And yeah, if you catch somebody, one day they're one personality and the next day they're a totally different one, you can't do a heck of a lot about that other than come back a third day and look for the average, I think it's super important to understand where people are, and probably we need to understand where they are in business. On the other hand, I will outline that early in my career, one of my first sales jobs, I was that canary in the coal mine when women started to be the buyers. I sold an industrial product that always had been sold by men, always had been bought by men, and all of a sudden we started getting women customers, and our sales managers, the old guys, couldn't figure out what to do with these women because they didn't want to go play poker and go to ball games and all that kind of stuff. What I realized was these women were working moms who had a working spouse, and maybe she didn't care about the ball game, but her husband did. And all of a sudden I could ingratiate myself to her by finding something that had value to her spouse. I realize I'm kind of stretching the metaphor here a little bit. It's not exactly about personality, but it's about understanding where people are in life and empathizing with what their circumstance is, and then figuring out how you can prove that you get it. You get them and you understand where they are. I think that's what we have to strive to do.
All right. Good stuff, Michael. Well, thanks again. Thanks to Pool Consulting, Michael Dixon, and of course, thank you all for joining us for this Epic Insight webinar. And first and foremost, we wish you safety and health as you support your families, colleagues, and clients. And please don't hesitate to contact us if there's anything Epic RPS can do to support you. Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Brian.